Thanks, Dawn. Hi, everyone. My name's Veronica and I am an alcoholic. The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety, January 1958. I think that many oldsters who have put our AA booze cure to severe but successful tests still find they often lack emotional sobriety. Perhaps they will be the spearhead for the next major development in AA, the development of much more real maturity and balance, which is to say humility, in our relations with ourselves, with our fellows, and with God. Those adolescent urges that so many of us have for top approval, perfect security, and perfect romance, urges quite appropriate to age 17, prove to be an impossible way of life when we are at age 47 or 57. Since AA began, I've taken immense wallops in all these areas because of my failure to grow up emotionally and spiritually. My God, how painful it is to keep demanding the impossible, and how very painful to discover, finally, that all along we've had the cart before the horse. Then comes the final agony of seeing how awfully wrong we have been, but still finding ourselves unable to get off the emotional merry-go-round. How to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result, and so into easy, happy, and good living? Well, that's not only the neurotic's problem. It's the problem of life itself for all of us who have got to a point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all our affairs. Even then, as we hew away, peace and joy may still elude us. That's the place so many of us AA oldsters have come to, and it's a hell of a spot, literally. How shall our unconscious, from which so many of our fears, compulsions, and phony aspirations still stream, be brought into line with what we actually believe, know, and want? How to convince our dumb, raging, and hidden Mr. Hyde becomes our main task. I've recently come to believe that this can be achieved. I believe so because I begin to see many benighted ones, folks like you and me, commencing to get results. Last autumn, depression, having no real rational cause at all, almost took me to the cleaners. I began to be scared that I was in for another long chronic spell. Considering the grief I've had with depressions, it wasn't a bright prospect. I kept asking myself, why can't the 12 steps work to release depression? By the hour, I stared at the St. Francis prayer. It's better to comfort than to be comforted. Here was the formula all right, but why didn't it work? Suddenly, I realized what the matter was. My basic flaw had always been dependence, almost absolute dependence, on people or circumstances to supply me with prestige, security, and the like. Failing to get these things according to my perfectionist dreams and specifications, I had fought for them. And when defeat came, so did my depression. There wasn't a chance of making the outgoing love of St. Francis a workable and joyous way of life until these fatal and almost absolute dependencies were cut away. Because I had over the years undergone a little spiritual development, the absolute quality of these frightful dependencies had never before been so starkly revealed. Reinforced by what grace I could secure in prayer, I found I had to exert every ounce of will and action to cut off these faulty emotional dependencies upon people, upon AA, indeed upon any set of circumstances whatsoever. Then only could I be free to love as Francis had. Emotional and instinctual satisfactions, I saw, were really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing a love appropriate to each relation of life. Plainly, I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to Him by loving others as He would have me. And I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. For my dependency meant demand, a demand for the possession and control of the people and the conditions surrounding me. While those words, absolute dependency, may look like a gimmick, they were the ones that helped to trigger my release into my present degree of stability and quietness of mind, qualities which I'm now trying to consolidate by offering love to others regardless of the return to me. This seems to be the primary healing circuit, an outgoing love of God's creation and His people, by means of which we avail ourselves of His love for us. It is most clear that the real current can't flow until our paralyzing dependencies are broken and broken at depth. Only then can we possibly have a glimmer of what adult love really is. Spiritual calculus, you say? Not a bit of it. Watch any AA of 6 months working with a new 12-step case. If the case says to the devil with you, the 12th stepper only smiles and turns to another case. He doesn't feel frustrated or rejected. If his next case responds and in turn starts to give love and attention to other alcoholics, yet gives none back to him, the sponsor's happy about it anyway. He still doesn't feel rejected. Instead, he rejoices that his one-time prospect is sober and happy. And if his next following case turns out in later time to be his best friend or romance, then the sponsor is most joyful. But he well knows that his happiness is a byproduct, the extra dividend of giving without any demand for a return. The really stabilizing thing for him was having and offering a love to that strange drunk on his doorstep. That was Francis at work. Powerful and practical, minus dependency and minus demand. In the first 6 months of my own sobriety, I worked hard with many alcoholics. Not a one responded. Yet this work kept me sober. It wasn't a question of those alcoholics giving me anything. My stability came out of trying to give, not out of demanding that I receive. Thus, I think it can work out with emotional sobriety. If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root of it some unhealthy dependency and its consequent unhealthy demand. Let us, with God's help, continually surrender these hobbling demands. Then we can be set free to live and love. We may then be able to 12-step ourselves and others into emotional sobriety. Of course, I haven't offered you a really new idea, only a gimmick that has started to unhook several of my own hexes at depth. Nowadays, my brain no longer races compulsively in either elation, grandiosity, or depression. I've been given a quiet place in bright sunshine.
Thank you, Veronica. And I am honored to be able to introduce our speaker. Tonight we have Francis from Santa Fe. It's good to hear from you and see you. Francis will share for 40 minutes to an hour, and then we'll open it up. So go ahead, Francis. It's all yours.
Hi, everybody. I'm Francis, and can you hear me? Okay. I'm Francis, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm also a grateful member of Al-Anon. I have about 29 plus years of sobriety and about 14 years in the Al-Anon program. And I love this meeting, and I'm very honored to be asked to lead. And I hope that God, will channel whatever you all need to hear from me. And yeah, so the letter that Bill read, it reminds me of most of my sobriety. I got into the program when I had just turned 26. And not only was I actually young, I was extremely immature. I went to treatment to get out of trouble. I didn't even really want to get sober. And I had a baby. He was 10 months old. And, my motives weren't good. And, God worked his first miracle on me, which is that I was struck sober, even though I had no intention of like staying sober. I was just going to get in there and get out of trouble. And I really had gotten myself into a mess. And some people get themselves into a mess financially and in jail. But I had gotten myself into a mess as far as with my former husband and the baby. And, I ended up having to be visited by social services because I was a drinking mother. And, and it just kind of went on. It was a messy divorce. And my first few sponsors, my first sponsor, I worked the 12 steps with, and I was in the second round of that, and she decided that she wasn't an alcoholic. And she left the program. And there were some cool people that I was really looking at. They were a little bit older than me, and man, I wanted to be like them. And they left to follow a guru. And here's God's second thing that happened, is that for some reason the message was carried to me. It did go into my heart, and I didn't believe them. And I didn't believe that that was the answer for me. And I'm very grateful for that. You know, I worked poorly with other people and searched around for another sponsor. And I want to say that I really, I don't want to say I did half measures. Let's say I did 3/4 measures. So somehow, you know, they say half measures avail nothing. Well, if you do 3/4, you know, somehow I got there. I didn't drink. And I'd been remarried for the second time and had another child who had a disability. And, you know, and I was a silversmith, and I lived out of town. And anyway, I was still extremely immature. I pulled this card out from my Al-Anon. I don't know if it's an official Al-Anon thing or not, but it's a bookmark called Emotional Maturity. And I remember the first time I read this, and I was like, you know, I'm not that. I'm none of that. And it says the mature person has developed attitudes in relation to himself and his environment which have lifted him above childishness in thought and behavior. Some of the characteristics of this person who has achieved true adulthood and suggested here. He accepts criticism gratefully, being honestly glad for the opportunity to improve. Number 2, he does not indulge in self-pity. He has begun to feel the laws of compassion.
$0.0 pending final verification.
I don't know what that is. We gotta cut it off. Sorry, Francis.
Oh, that's okay.
There we go.
Number 3, he does not expect special consideration from anyone. Number 4, he controls his temper. Number 5, he meets emergencies with poise. Number 6, his feelings are not easily hurt. He accepts the responsibility of his own acts without trying to alibi. 7, he's outgrown the all or nothing stage. 8, he recognizes that no person or situation is wholly good or wholly bad. 9, he is not impatient at reasonable delays. He has learned that he is not the arbitrator of the universe and that he must often adjust himself to other people and their convenience. 10, he's a good loser. 11, he does not worry unduly about things he cannot help. 12, he is not given to boasting or showing off in socially unacceptable ways. He is honestly glad when others enjoy success or good fortune. He has outgrown envy and jealousy. 14, he's open-minded, listens to the opinion of others. 15, he's not a chronic fault finder. 16, he plans things in advance rather than trusting to the inspiration of the moment. Lastly, he has faith in a higher power. He feels himself an organic part of mankind as a whole, contributing his part to each group of which he is a member. And 3, he obeys the spiritual essence of the golden rule, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And I really think that's a pretty tall order, especially the first time that I saw this card. And when I look at it right now, I don't feel as discouraged about that. But anyway, I got into the steps and I planted myself in AA and I did my 3/4 job and I had okay sponsors. I had this 80-year-old sponsor that said, I had 11 years of sobriety, and she fired me. And she said, well, you're just too much for me. You know, I thought getting a sponsee that had 11 years, you know, we were just going to work the steps and stuff, but you're like a mess. And I'm just too old to handle this. I'm just giving you a picture sort of me, even doing the right things in AA. And my life was not terrible. It was much better than it was before. I was repairing relations with my parents and trust in the world around me. And at this point, I believe I had gotten a corporate job, and I, you know, hadn't managed to get fired, although it was close. And I ended up getting another divorce, and my former husband, Tom, who was a member of this program, and we kind of entered the program together, and he left for a while and came back in. He just passed away. I'd had my second kid with him, and I'm still really in grief. And I'm jumping around a little bit, but he passed away about 2 months after my dad did, in April of this year. And I did 6 weeks almost of back-to-back hospice. I wasn't in charge of either of these people. My mother was in charge of my dad, and my younger son was in charge of his father. But, you know, I think about that second marriage and my escape from that. And I just had other fun things to do. And, you know, I felt like we had grown apart. And, you know, I had immediately gotten another boyfriend. And anyway, boys were getting to be mid-teenagers, and they were starting to get in all kinds of trouble. And it ate my lunch. And I was like going to this corporate job, and my lunch was getting eaten, and I was, you know, ulceratic inside, and was not the picture of emotional sobriety. I did all kinds of things on the outside. I got into sports, and I quit smoking, and I joined a dance troupe, and I got a motorcycle, and you know, I was just trying to just hold myself together, and everything around me was just falling apart. One of my value systems, one of my highest desires for myself is I want to be a good mother. And it's always been that. I've always wanted to be a good mother. And for whatever reason, I can look back and I can tell you I did the best I could. I don't know that I was a good mother. And my kids both landed up, they were accused of a very serious crime, and they were put into jail for a long time while waiting to find out whether they really did it or not. And that was, you know, the rug was pulled out from under me. I was working with this lady. Her name was Kathy Unger, and Herb K was her sponsor. And she was taking me through this worksheet, these worksheets that were supposed to cure the uncurable alcoholic like me. And a guy named Tony B, who was a real good friend of mine, said, well, you know, Frances, your last resort is going to be Kathy. You're going to have to ask her to sponsor you. And I was in the middle of that. And she was tough as nails. And I really needed this from her. She, you know, I think that she saved me. And I remember calling her up on the phone and crying and telling her another story about some boyfriend or whatever. And she says, Frances, why are you crying? And I said, because I'm frustrated. And she said, you know, children cry when they're frustrated. So that was the kind of sponsorship I had. And it may seem really mean, but, you know, I really needed my ego. I needed to get smashed down to really develop a relationship with God, because that's really what I'm seeking here. I'm powerless to be emotionally mature. I'm powerless to have emotional sobriety. I'm powerless to be a good mother. I'm powerless to know what to do. I'm powerless to hang on to a good relationship. And what I really need is I need to open my heart up enough for God to get all the way in there, whatever that takes, and to change me, to have that psychic change. And that's really what I lacked when I talk about the 3/4 method. And it was incredibly painful. And just like a lot of stuff in my sobriety that just doesn't flow in a line. While I was in the middle of writing my 4th step, Kathy drank. And we agreed that we would finish the 5th step together, and I went out to see her, and she seemed fine and read my 5th step, and she said, well, Tony B worked with me and he worked the rest of this method. And so I want you to go back to Santa Fe and work the rest of the steps. And Tony and I talk about this a lot, but we don't know where Kathy is. So if anybody here knows where Kathy Unger is, I'd love to know. She may have just dropped out, and that's the way it goes. So it was my second sponsor really that had decided they didn't need the program. But you know what? I got what she said. My ego was completely smashed. And I had a good foundation now for God to come in and, help me rebuild myself. And I cried all the way back from Phoenix to Santa Fe, not because I was frustrated, but because I was truly disgusted with myself and how emotionally immature I'd been, and my actions and how they had affected my children. And, a lot of this, when I look back on it, is not like, I don't know. My mother would say this to me, Frances, if you had been a stay-at-home mom, because I try to solve these problems in the past, well, if I had been a stay-at-home mom and just not worried so much about finances, then the kids would be great. And she says, you don't know that. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and she had me. And I spent the first from 14 to 19 in institutionalized for alcoholism, but they didn't know what that was yet. And so she was a stay-at-home mom and had a disaster kid, or she felt like I was, it was not what she expected, let's put it that way. And she wasn't prepared for it the same way I wasn't prepared for my 2 guys. So anyway, Tony and I worked together for a long time. And one of the greatest things that I learned from him was discipline. And there was the 10th step and the 11th step also in the morning and at night. And so I learned from him to call him. And we really worked together well. But I had joined Al-Anon at the time and discovered, started to delve into a lot of control issues and kind of digging in there. And I would call myself, I revert back to what I want to call rigidity. And there is rigidity and discipline seem like the same thing. I wake up in the morning and I read my On Awakening, and I get down on my knees, and on Monday night, I go to my home group. By the way, my home group is the Salvation Army Monday night, 7:00 in Santa Fe. And, I do these things, and Wednesday I go to my Al-Anon meeting and I meet with my 2 sponsors, one on one day and one on the other. And And then, you know, the discipline is that I have an outline of things that, tools that if I do them and use them, they're going to help me along my path to emotional sobriety. And what I've always really wanted was the ability to pause. When I have these difficult situations, I want to just sit there in this glorious pause and look at this person and think, how interesting. God, what shall I do or not do next? And that is just now really starting to come to me. But I became aware yesterday of the difference between discipline and rigidity. After work, I didn't want to go work out at the gym, but I have to for a physical problem that I'm having. I should work out. So I go to the gym, and I discover when I'm at the gym that I'm really having like severe low blood sugar. I mean, I don't feel well. I can hardly do what I'm doing, you know, and this is the difference to me between rigidity and discipline. I disciplined myself there. I was having a problem, and then I said, well, this isn't working out tonight. And I went home and I didn't think about it anymore. And so that's kind of how I work my program today, is that if I accidentally wake up late or I need extra sleep and I have to be somewhere, and I do my meditation and I set it for 10 minutes instead of 20 minutes or whatever, and I don't worry about it. I think that that's like really one of my goals, is to be really present, you know, to make plans and then be completely flexible. Today I was supposed to go see a PT guy for my injury, and I had it down at 10, and I go there and it was supposed to be at 9. And I said, oh, was I charged? And he said, no, because you've never done that before. And I said, cool. And I worked out anyway there. They let me use the machines. And then I'm kind of going to, at 8 o'clock this morning, I was supposed to talk to a sponsee on the phone, and she called and said, you know, she couldn't do it, you know, so the 10 o'clock appointment was my second disruption. And then later on in the day, I'm going to go to work, and I have all this stuff to do. And my son calls me, and he's still boxing up his dad's workshop. And he said, Mom, can you help me? And I said, yeah, let me think about this. I could give you 3 hours today. I got to go check in at work, and, you know, I have to do all of this. So anyway, I got home, I got dressed, I went to work, I checked in, and then my son never called me. Anyway, I guess I'm just trying to say that every day I have this, you know, like a plan that almost always gets completely changed. And I've gotten really good at just moving through my life at whatever is presenting itself to me. And I'm not worried about it. And I'm not trying to make the plan work out because it's not working out. And that's produced a lot of happiness with me. And I feel very authentic as opposed to people pleasing. And, you know, the people pleasing thing is really about my fear. And I was listening, and, you know, I listened to the letter that's read, that Veronica read. And, you know, we're just, a lot of us, and I think most of us, when we come in here, are very dependent on, you know, the way that people are going to act when we move through life with them, whether it's our family or coworkers or lovers or husbands. I'm married again for the 3rd time, and I've been with this guy about 13 years, and we got married in 2018. And we constantly work on our marriage. We see somebody professionally, not because we're about to get divorced, but because both of us need help, and we have the goal of you know, I'm learning how this can be a sustaining, growing, non-stagnant, non-expectation relationship. And I need help to do that. And but I get presented with lots of opportunities on my expectations and what actually happens. We work together, we own a business together, and we do very different things at the business, but we do interact some during the day. And some of our most horrific fights have been about the business and, you know, what either should or shouldn't happen and all of that. So, you know, I have to be present and have God in my heart all day long. And so when I started to work with, I'm working with a woman now, and when I picked her out, she represented somebody that I would like to emulate. I don't want to be her, but I want to emulate her, and mostly this aspect of moving through life with a loose fitting garment, and saying, oh, well, that's very interesting, and oh, that's very curious, and you know, that kind of wonderful attitude of just moving through life. And that has really seemed unobtainable to me, with my control issues and all of the things that I invent to go wrong, and, you know, just piling all this stuff into my life, and makes it hard to be serene. So she gave me a couple of suggestions that really have been mind-blowing, because I told her, I said, I just don't have the pause. You know, I'm not the vessel, I'm not the channel for God to enter into me and me to emulate, you know, to have love shine out from me everywhere I go. I'm not doing that. I'm reacting to people when they don't do what I want them to do. My husband, my kids. So she said, well, wherever it is that you sit all the time, you make some labels, and, you know, GD, God, HP, whatever. And so, you know, like I'm sitting on the toilet, and the door, when it closes, there's a little label HP. When I leave the house, you know, there's the HP, the steering wheel, the phone. And that's kind of where I started. And I just now put an app on my phone that 15 times a day, this prayer minder comes up, and bing, and it, you know, it just has something that I put in there, thy will be done, or let me be the boss you want me to be, or okay. And the funny thing is, with my phone reception, it doesn't really work that well. And it gets like backed up. And I'm thinking to myself now, how come I haven't heard about praying for a while? And then all of a sudden, bing, 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 you know, and it has this whole thing like, pause, breathe, be the best boss, or the boss you want me to be, and, you know, the mother you want me to be, and thy will be done. And anyway, I just think it's funny, because I'm talking about rigidity and discipline and all of that. So I have the discipline to put this app on and to pay attention to it, but it doesn't really work the way, you know, anyway, or maybe it is working exactly how it's supposed to work. I've had a couple of profound experiences with my higher power, and one of them was, I'm going to share a couple of them tonight. One of them is that I was sitting in my office, and this is Mark had just moved in, and he had his previous wife had grown a grown kid that really was acting up and treating him terribly. And so he did not want, before we got, you know, he said, look, if I'm going to move in here, your kids, I mean, I don't want your kids to move back in. What do you think about that? And I said, well, I think that's great because I never want them to move back in either. You know, and I knew that he had this background with this woman that I knew, actually, Santa Fe's small. And my kids were just, I mean, they were just horrible, violent. You know, I was called by the police so many times. I never knew really what to do. And I'm sure that God talked to me, but I didn't hear God. I asked God all kinds of stuff, or maybe I did the foxhole prayer, like, you know, I don't know, but it was just, it just, I hope no one ever has to go through that. It was just so horribly despairing. And I get a phone call one night. I'm in my office, my home office, and my son says, I need money, and I'm in Al-Anon. And so I say, well, I'm sorry, but I don't think I can do that for you. Something like that. I was nice. And he said, if you don't give me that money right now, I'm going to come over and I'm going to shoot your windows out, and I'm going to slash the tires on Mark's truck, because he knew that would really get me. And you're going to be really, really sorry. And then he hung up. And the fear gripped me, like Bill talks about in this letter, where he was afraid of what would happen if he was to go into depression. I was just afraid. I mean, I could have puked right at that moment. And right at that moment, I see sort of a ghostly face that looks a whole lot like Christ in the storybooks. And it gets real big right in my face, and it says, fear not. And at that time, I had been going through, again, this inventory, the fear inventory in the book. And this profoundly changed a lot of things for me. Previously, and I still do get sponsees that say, well, I need fear. No, you need caution and awareness. If you're walking around alone, you know, in the dark or something, you know, you don't need fear. And anyway, that's the message that I got. And that's the message that the book says, is that we outgrow fear, because we're talking about emotional maturity here. And I outgrew my diapers, and now I have to outgrow fear. And so when fear hits me, I have to realize that I am just to let it go. Let it go. I don't need fear. And there was a command type of tone that I received from my higher power, and it wasn't nice. But you know, I left the office and I laid down and I went to sleep. And I mean, you know, it's just changed a lot for me. I'm not saying that I don't still get into fear and I worry about the consequences and power and prestige and all of that, but I know that I don't need it. It does not serve any purpose other than to wreck my life. So that was one way. And then recently, my oldest son, who is 30, he and I did not speak for 5 years, and I did not know where he was, and I could not have gotten in touch with him. And he left here angry. now it's been about 6 years. And when my dad got sick and when Tom got sick, my mother was in contact with him about something. And he ended up coming out to see my dad while my dad was in hospice. And I hadn't seen him. And I had gone through these stages with my son where I prayed to God that we would have a relationship. And then as I heard about him from others, or occasional stories about him from my younger son, who also doesn't get along with him, but his friends, I began to, and people told me the things he had posted on Facebook. I began to realize that I didn't want to have a relationship with him. I wanted to have a relationship with who I pretended he was. And that can be true with a lot of my relationships, that I'm having a relationship with someone that I pretend they are. And when they aren't that, I make them into that, and I want to mold them into that. But anyway, so I got to that stage where I realized that I actually didn't want to have a relationship with this man who was my son, and that I would pray for him and I'd patiently wait and see what happened in the coming years. So I was in a lot of grief about this, So then fast forward, and here he does, he steps in to communicate with my dad. And I ended up having to drive him back to the airport for some reason. And I had amends cards in my drawer at home that I think I had 3 cards, and he never wanted to hear the amends. So they are still there to be read at some point. And when we get to the airport, he unloads on me. And it's like he went into those amends cards that I had already admitted that I had done these things to my sponsor, to myself, and to God. And not in a nice way. I didn't do my amends with him. He let me know that all of those things on the amends cards were things that still gravely bothered him and that he held me responsible for. And some of the things I didn't really agree with, but I sat there and listened. And this was not something that I had sort of asked to have happen or anything. This is just what's happening. And he's going on for so long that I think he's going to miss the plane. I mean, and I am in so much pain because these are the things on my amends card. And he wasn't forgiving me, I didn't really say much of anything. So then I finally said, Will, I'm glad I agree with most, I agree with most of the things that you've said, and I'm so glad you could share them with me, but I think you're going to miss the plane. And he says, is that all you can say after not seeing me for 5 years? Anyway, I almost like flew out of my body while I was sitting in the car just to survive this, because I want to say it's really one of the most emotionally painful things that I've ever been through. Because I told you before about one of my biggest, hopes is that I am a good mother. And but I let him do this, and he did finally get out of the car, and that was a great relief. And we got to see each other twice more, once at his stepfather's funeral, and again, which he also told me off again. And again, at my dad's funeral, which everyone kind of just got along. And I was really amazed that God could come in. My two kids, they hate each other. Basically, everyone involving Will isn't getting there's not getting along. He burned a lot of bridges and done a lot of things. So everyone just kind of got along, and we ended that portion of my dad's funeral. It's a new step. And I really, he said, he wasn't really ready to have a relationship with me, but he didn't scream that at me. And I am looking forward and curious to see how that does develop. But that was some big stuff. And I felt like when I was a kid, I read these stories about like St. Peter's, like you die and you go to heaven, and somebody reads you the list of all the things that you did wrong, and hopefully some things you did right.
You're stinking my throat. Okay, back up.
But that's
Hey, Audrey, your phone came off mute. Sorry, Francis.
oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
This is all unplanned stuff, right? That's the way it's supposed to go. But anyway, and then when I went through the hospice recently with my former husband, and my younger son, who was 26, he did a really good job. I can't really express this. He had like a ventilator with a tracheotomy, and they sent him home anyway, and he had all this medication. And my son basically was an intensive care nurse. And I was able to, I hired a person for 3 nights a week while he was alive to give my son a break, because I told my son, I said, there's some things I can do and there's some things that I just can't do. And so I really took care of myself during this time. But it was amazing. Even though we were divorced, there was this family, and Will had called in, and it was like, Tom forgave him, and Matthew and I were on the other end of the phone with Tom, and it was this amazing healing that happened. And anyway, I am really in the present moment more than I ever have been, in these miracles that God has given me, which are crises, to unmask me and to take away all of the dependencies. The dependencies were stripped from me. And it's interesting how Bill Wilson sat around and thought about this and intellectually, and then put it in his heart to, my dog wants to come up. Come on, Snow. Intellectually was able to talk himself through this. Okay, enough. But for me, I had to have this, you know what I mean? Like, I still really want my dependencies. I'm looking around for them, and they just were taken from me. And then again, I was left with this beautiful, clean foundation, an empty vessel for God to just come in and fill and really, really, produce yet again a change in me that I have prayed for. I have pause. I can feel the presence of my higher power a lot during the day. And I don't think it'll always be like that. Things change from day to day, from year to year. but I'm mostly comfortable in my own skin, and I am very far from a drink. Uh, and I'm able to help people whenever they call. Anyway, I'm sure I've left out some marvelously, wonderful insights that I wanted to share with you guys tonight, but I think this is a good place for me to stop. And yeah, so thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you for sharing, Francis. And typically we ask the person to pick on a few people to follow up, not unless someone wants to put their hand up or pop in.
Okay. Does anyone want to share? I do know some people on here, so let's see here. Um, well, how about Mary Thayer? Are you there, Mary?
Hi, Francis. Yes, I am. Mary Thayer, alcoholic. Nice to
Hi,
see
Mary.
you guys. I'm really had a busy couple of days here, so I wanted to hear you speak tonight, Francis, and
Thank you.
share where you're at. I also am aware of how your progress has gone through the last few years, and especially over this past year with the loss of your father and your former husband. Grief has a way of opening us up and keeping us in the presence. And this is a shift over the whole last couple of years from what I've, this is like our second year of this COVID and stuff and all the losses and everything. And there's a lot of grief that's going on. And at the same time, as you said, this program has enabled me to be able to stay somewhat in the presence and be able to deal with whatever is surfacing for me each day. I happen to kind of get hysterical at trying to, at that line on page 87 says something about, that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to solve such problems and to ask for freedom from self-will. And what I realized is that if I'm going to be shown what to do next, it's going to become a problem. And because it's not about what I want done. And it took me years to see that, but now it's kind of funny in a way. It was like a couple of days ago, I didn't know that I would be dog sitting. I have this little tiny dog that my daughter owns. I guess I'm a grandmother of a dog. And she lost her uncle. And so she went up to Massachusetts, and I was so, if somebody said, well, that could have been an inconvenience. I said, it really wasn't an inconvenience. It was like, I was really glad that I could do something as a mother for my child. And that I have the time to do this, and I could be present for her. And she's coming home tonight. So I just got back home here, but she had texted me earlier and just kept thanking me and how much she appreciated something that I did for her. So I don't know how to show up to a daughter that's 58 years old and be a mother. But God shows me those things. Like apparently you were sharing, God showed you what to do with your youngest son's father who was, dying, and how you could be present there, how you could be present for your father, and how you could be present for a son that isn't yet ready to forgive you. I've gone through that. And now I have a wonderful relationship. So I think it's a process. I don't think we get emotionally sober and necessarily stop reacting. All of a sudden one day we've arrived, because that's just not the way it is. It's kind of why I'm still a seasoned beginner. Thanks for your share tonight.
What about Belinda?
Belinda C.
Wow. I'm kind of, I really enjoyed your thing, and I'm trying to remember all the things that connected. I know when we had our children, we would say, you know what our job is not to fuck them up. Sorry for the language, but I mean, that's what we said. It was the whole thing. We can't do that. But it's the emotional sobriety, really what I was thinking about and have been thinking about for the last couple of days, because and not doing my will. I never could be on a board of any kind, because I would just, like, even a church board or an HOA board or whatever. And even when I didn't want to go to AA, and then I went to AA, and then I was told I needed to go to the meeting, the board meetings, whatever they are. I said, I can't do that. I go nuts in there. No, but you need to go. And I didn't go nuts in there, so far. But I've been on this committee of a board here that has just gotten under my skin, because of it's a budget thing, and the community is for it's supposed to be an affordable community for older people, and they want to do this huge assessment. So because there are all these people, because Nashville's so popular, and they're making these modest houses into monster houses, and I just started crying at that. I mean, I just started right before they made this motion that they were railroading through. I just stopped, and I was like, I just want to know who is going to go around and tell these people that can't afford what you're about to assess them, what you're doing. And I just cried. I've never cried at a board meeting. It was just, and then found myself, and then getting pulled back in. I was like, I can't do that. But, I'm not going to do any more of these meetings. I don't want to, I can't do it. And then I get called at 2:00. I wasn't even all the way dressed. I was doing something else that I needed to do, that I thought I needed to do. And I got a call, and it was the candidates that are running against the people that are trying to do this, that are going out. Some of them are going out. And it was like, are you going to come to this meeting? And I was like, I didn't think you wanted me to come. I thought it was just for the candidates. No, we need you here. And that was pretty astounding. And then I end up spouting these principles, I was like, because they would be, I don't know. It's just so weird. It's just weird how the stuff, when you work it just works into you. And when you're open to it, it just comes out of you. And you find yourself saying, I think it would work better if we don't talk bad about people, you know? And I was like, should I say put principles? I mean, yeah, before personalities, and I did. I was like, okay, somebody's going to know, but it didn't matter. So, you know, and so ended up was talking AA stuff, you know, and didn't even know it was going to come out, but it was coming out. And even the chair of the board, when they came out with this new budget that I was crying over, had put some different things in there that was supposed to help some people, which was kind of an attempt. Anyway, it's just weird. I mean, I liked your spirit, the way you described the things that have happened, and they definitely happened to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people. And it's great. Thanks for letting me bringing all that stuff together for me, Francis.
Does anybody want to raise their hand? Come on. Okay.
Chad P has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Well, then go for it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Chad. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be here and sober. And Francis, thanks so much. That was wonderful. I'm really grateful that Gary told me about this meeting. And your talk checked so many boxes for me. And it's funny. You talked about, well, it wasn't funny. Your wonderful experience with your higher power, where you got the message of fear not. But for me, it was one of these God incidences, because that's the name of my little article in this month's Grapevine. It's Fear Not. And today I was looking at that article and just feeling like a giant hypocrite, because I was felt so full of fear, you know. And the article, at that point, the article to me made it sound like I had it very spiritually together and all that. But it really, I'm getting to rework step 10 this 10th month. I'm learning more and more the value of putting my fears on paper, and just getting to write it down for me it makes a huge difference. And it's amazing how, like you shared about, when I write about them, like you shared, it seems like relationships are so much of, I mean, they're so much a part of my life period in sobriety, and a lot of my fears really crystallize around them. And a lot of times I might feel like I'm really wound up about something going on today, but when I start writing a fear inventory, I start to find really old fears, like buried ones from when I was a kid, and fears about my family and stuff. And I've got kind of had a similar experience with my oldest brother to what you shared about with your son, where I tried to make an amends that wasn't accepted, and have needed to kind of put some boundaries there with him. And all these fears have been coming up for me about, is he going to be okay, and is it my fault that he's not okay? And just this insane sense of responsibility for him and for other people. And from what I've gotten to read and some of what I've learned in Al-Anon meetings, codependency that's codependency for me. And I don't know if the term codependency, I'm guessing it wasn't around when Bill wrote Emotional Sobriety, but for me, what he talks about in there about faulty dependency really translates right to codependency. And codependency for me is a character defect these days. It helps me to look at it that way. So thanks again so much. I hope to come back. This is a terrific meeting. Love you all.
How about Audrey?
Audrey, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. Oh, thank you so much, Francis, for your share. I just really appreciated it so much. And I just want to say to everyone out there in this group, I've been listening to you all for over a year now. I've been like I feel like a secret observer here. I never participate. It's just been, it's this group, this emotional sobriety talking has just brought so much growth to my program. I just want to thank everyone who is here every single week. I mean, I see a lot of you all the same people, and I just love you all, and I love your shares. And there's just so much. My mom's got like 40 years of sobriety, and she told me when she got sober in Ohio, she used to go to giant speaker meetings, and she said, I could just hide out there forever. So again, I'm sorry I haven't participated sooner, just to thank you all, but thank you for everything about this group. And as far as your talk, Francis, I mean, I'm just amazed in the similarities we have. Your story is just so much like mine. I got sober in my mid-20s too, but I mean, your final words about pause and presence, with your higher power aren't permanent. That is just something that has really came into, my insight this year, that, I'm always kicking my own ass because I can't keep this up all the time. And, and I can't do it the way I want to do it. And it's just like that joy isn't there all the time, but just realizing that isn't always necessarily a permanent thing, but knowing I can get back to it is it's such a gift for me. So, and another cool thing this happened this past year, I know you all love Mary Thayer, and I got to meet her this year. I met her in this room, and she didn't even know me, and she is my sponsor. So I just am so excited. I want to meet all you people in person someday at some thoughts thing or something. But anyway, and Sam, thank you for always being, consistently here and leading this. I mean, I just can't tell you all enough how much this meeting means to me. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry I interrupted the meeting I jumped in my car. I had to do an errand. And I was talking during your talk, Francis. I am so sorry. My dog was in the car and stinking up the car, and all of a sudden you could hear me talking. Again, I apologize. So bye. Thank you.
That's okay. Emerson threw a spoon at the computer when she started reading the stuff about maturity, which is good. Juiced? Erica?
You're muted, Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm such a grateful alcoholic. And Francis, I never speak on this meeting because there's just so many of you. I get scared. But that was just such an amazing talk. I have to admit, when I saw you on the screen, I was like, I know Francis so well. I know everything Francis is going to say. And then this beautiful thing happened. I said, open your mind, Erica. And I listened to you like I never have before. And that to me is a miracle, not a small one, but quite a big one. And I got so much from what you said. I'm having trouble figuring out what my favorite thing is, but here's the thing is, at once we commence to outgrow fear. That promise to me that's the bomb right now. That is the most important promise in my life right now. And because I've become aware this year of how afraid I am and how that is sort of drives all my character defects. And it is the biggest source of my unhappiness. I can almost always root it down to fear. Every single inventory that I do is the one thing that remains. And I heard you say, I outgrew my diapers. And I'm like, yeah, so did I. So come on, God, get down here and show off with me already. You know, like I cannot do this by myself. I know that. You guys taught me that. So as you were reading the Al-Anon bookmark, my sponsor texted it to me, which I think is really funny because I was listening into it with ears of, you know, where am I? Where do I weigh in on any of those character defects? They're either, you know, and I realized that like this year I got to start working with someone who's brand new in the program. And it's been so many years since I was able to do that. And the gift is I see her, I feel so much for her, but the gift for me is that I see where I was. And very oftentimes I'm right there with her, don't get me wrong, but everything was such a drama. Everything was, you know, there were these days when nothing made sense. Emotional sobriety was the last thing possible in the world. It was, how can I just not kill my husband when he walks in the door? I have a frying pan, I'm ready. I don't do that anymore. You know, I also have outside support for my marriage, which is the most precious thing that God has given me in sobriety. And I know that if I want to keep it, it's got to be, I have to have an open mind and willingness always to do that. I did something a little mature today. For me, I let go of a client, which is, you know, I don't do that easily. I kind of hold on to them for dear life because God knows there's never going to be another one on the planet, right? I know that's not true, but I mean, I really do know that's not true. But I still have a hard time letting go. And a number of things had happened with her to where I realized that if I did not let go of her, I was going to have a resentment. And so all I did was took responsibility for not having a new resentment. And it was, you guys, it was fabulous. It felt so mature to me. It was really, really good. And then the other thing is, I had to speak with an employee of ours and let her know that what she was doing was not appropriate. And that was the second really mature thing that I did today. And so honestly, I don't ever think about myself as in, is this mature or is this immature? But as I was listening to you today and having known you for so many years, Francis, it's almost 18 years that I've known you. And I've watched you change. And listening to you tonight was just, it blew my heart wide open. I love you so much, sister. And I'll pass with that.
I don't see we have anybody else have their hand up. So that's how I just start to pick on people. What about you, Chris H? What are you doing over there, buddy?
Thanks, Sam. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Francis, thank you so much for your share tonight. It meant a lot to me. The two things that are sticking with me. Sorry, I'm hearing some interference. Can you all hear that? Sorry, it's distracting me. The things that stick out to me tonight are the rigidity and discipline that you talked about, the difference between those two. I think I wrestle a lot with rigidity. You know, if I've decided something's going to happen a certain way and it doesn't, then I'm in reaction mode. And so to focus on the discipline and be flexible is my takeaway tonight. And I really appreciate that. And then the other thing that you said about fear, that we don't need fear, and some sponsees feel like fear is important. I think that I, not at a conscious level, but at a subconscious level, think that fear is important. And it was just really meaningful to hear from you tonight that the reality is that with maturity, we don't need to be afraid. We need to be cautious, or I forget exactly the word that you said, but those are the two big things that I take away, along with everything else that you shared in your beautiful share. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Tom, Rhode Island. How you doing, friend? Haven't heard from you in a little while.
Hi, my name is Tom. I am an alcoholic. Thanks for calling on me, Sam. And I appreciate and very grateful for you also hosting this meeting weekly. We have a meeting just before this Unity group, my home group from Barneveld, New York. And I've been hosting a Zoom meeting since the pandemic began. So this meeting is the second meeting of the night, and we go a little long, but that's okay. Some nights or some weeks I have to bow out because I get tired. But tonight, for some reason, I've stuck with it, and I'm very glad that I have, because those that have shared this evening have really meant a lot to me. This topic of emotional sobriety is near and dear to my heart. I recently moved from my hometown of 60, almost 64 years to Rhode Island in April of this year. And boy, I'll tell you, I've been banging on my high chair since I moved here in April. I have been immature, to say the least, both emotionally and mentally and physically, and to the point where I've exhausted my wife, and she too has decided she's needed help, and thankfully she's getting it, and she's getting the help that she needs, and she's standing up to me, and she's putting me in my place, and she's looking out for herself. And I couldn't ask for any more from her, but I certainly have asked a lot. And it's all because I have decided somewhere that I was forced to make this move. I somehow decided that this wasn't a conscious decision. I somehow have been able to place the blame on another person, not taking ownership of it, not being responsible. And how is that even possible, right? Well, it is possible, because that's exactly what I've been doing. And we moved here for all of the right reasons. We moved here for our grandchildren, for our own children, so that we could all be close together as a family. There's no better reason, right? You would all agree. We all say family comes first, and now I have an opportunity to do that. But there is something about me that is always thinking, like the worst maybe, and not able to see things for the best. And the truth of it is I'm going to get through this. The truth of it is I'm going to look back on this and recognize this is the best thing that we could have done for our family. And all of the fear that I've been experiencing is going to go away, and my life is going to be just fine. So even though I know this at some level, intellectually, as always, the emotion has to catch up. So it's reassuring to me to hear other people talk about emotional upheaval, followed by emotional growth, followed by eventually emotional stability. So put me someplace in that hierarchy, if you would. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. And thanks, Sam.
Thanks for coming, Tom. What about Maria from Tampa?
sorry, I was looking up emotional maturity thing on there. I want to speak, but I don't want to speak. I'm too intimidated by this meeting. But you know, Francis, I can totally relate. And when you said it, it was kind of like, wow, that's me too. Was always wanted to be a good mother. That was kind of like my goal in life. And read so many books on parenting, and you know, I was going to fix it. And then I thought, I'll just be the opposite of my mom because she was terrible. So, you know, let's do the opposite. And that didn't work out either. And I didn't get into to the program till I was 56 years old. So, you know, that's what I'm kind of dealing with now, is that probably guilt for some of the things. I don't know if I can say this without getting emotional, but I have two daughters, and one of them died of an overdose. And that's a tough one for me. You know, there's guilt there. And I know I didn't make her an addict, just like my parents didn't make me an alcoholic. And I was so glad when I heard a speaker say that the other day, because that helps. But, you know, just dealing with that's what I wanted so badly, to be this perfect mom. And I wasn't all bad, but, you know, I'm sure the stuff's going to come up. But anyways, I'm glad I'm here. I didn't really want to say all this, but I'm glad I did. Thank you. And thanks, Francis, for saying that. That's a tough one for me.
So glad you're here. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Jeffrey.
Hi. Thanks for recognizing me. And I just wanted to say hi to everybody. This is my first time here. I wanted to thank Yorena, who I saw was on here. I cruised around and found her. And I was at the beach very recently with a whole bunch of, another gift for the program, a whole bunch of folks from AA who I traveled down there with. And Yorena joined us for the first time this year, and she's the one that told me about this and said, I forget what you said, Yorena, but it's been one of the best things you've ever done for your sobriety. And I could tell when she said it that she was telling me the truth. And so I thought I'd check it out. And I have to say that I have to agree that it's something that I can definitely use. Thank you, Dawn, for facilitating, and Francis, I really appreciate you speaking. And I heard a lot of what you said that really helped me. I was frantically writing down all these things that it says make you emotionally mature, you know, and I'm thinking not, you know. And I had this is coming a time in my life when I can really use it. I had what to me was a tragedy back in May when I had a relationship end unexpectedly. I mean, totally blindsided by a woman that I was with for close to 5 years. And, you know, I've been in AA for a while, and I don't just dabble. I mean, I'm in. I have a sponsor. He knows who I am, and I sponsor guys, and I do service work, and I have a home group, and I attend a lot of meetings and all that good stuff. And but I did not. I was totally shocked by my own reaction and how poorly I handled it. I absolutely, you know, they say sobriety is not just about drinking. It's you know, sober is synonymous with sane. And I was not sober at all for about 3 months. And thank goodness, you know, I had the support of AA and some other outside help and readings that I like delved into, and because I was absolutely stark raving mad. I couldn't sleep, didn't eat, woke up first thing in the morning and was texting this person, and all kinds of just crazy, unhealthy behavior. And you know, I'd be lying if I said, you know, fortunately, and this recent 2-week, which turned into 18-day trip that I took away, where I had time to relax and do a lot of meditating and be constantly around people in AA, and my sponsor was there. We spent 2 weeks together. Was really helpful in my getting over it, so to speak. But I'd have to say that if I was to say to you right now, like, yep, I'm over it, I'd be lying. You know, I still have more than my moments every day where I still, you know, go back into anger, and the pity pot is huge. And so, you know, this whatever you call it, this venue, I think, well, I think I'll keep coming back if it's all right with y'all. Thanks for letting me share.
Take it away, Don. I forgot for a second.
Well, thank you, Francis. I really appreciate your share. I think if I was going to add anything, I can say that there are times when we really have to have just kind of boots on the ground trudging, and we walk through our lives, and there's a lot of maturity just to do that with a little bit of dignity and grace. And it sounds like, you know, you've had a lot to walk through, and I'm proud of you. And I also, you know, when you said fear not, I thought, you know, it says in here, fear is the evil corroding thread. It doesn't say anything good about it. Like evil corroding thread, yuck. So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it. And for the people that are new here, welcome. And Sam, you should put Audrey on your radar for calling. She did pretty good for the first time sharing.
I know. We hey Francis, I think you just kind of whacked everybody upside the head with that emotional maturity thing from Al-Anon. Nobody wanted to hear that shit, okay? So I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No, I looked it up and good, and I even copied and pasted it to a couple people. Let's also let everyone know that the real cool thing about this, at least for me, is being able to listen to these recordings over. I get a lot more when I listen to some different, you know, when I listen to them again. Chris, can you send that, or Corey, can you put a link to, oh, you did? Okay, good. To the Dropbox. It has all the speakers of everybody who's been on here, all the meetings. So if you ever just, you know, by yourself on a trip or something and want to listen to one of these meetings, we have that available to you. Francis, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the evening? Anything that's come to you?
Not really. I really enjoyed listening to other people talk about that, and I really I'm just very honored to have this platform with people that I really respect here. And I too am really in the background listening. I've listened to lots of these. And I just want to say that the whole Al-Anon program is basically about all of this, in case y'all ever want to check it out. I'm saying that it's supposed to be kind of funny, but they call it graduate school for the alcoholic. I have to be in that program, and if anyone is curious about Al-Anon, you know, I put my phone number in there, and anybody can call me about anything, but some people have wondered about Al-Anon and they don't really know what it's about. I have to go there the same way that I attend AA. It's a life and death situation for me. So I can screw myself up there also. Anyway, good night. That's it.
So the way we close it out is we go to our inner room and just say the Lord's Prayer to yourself if you care to. Much love. Great job, Francis. What an honor to have you tonight. You did a really great job. Really spoke to a lot of us and really spoke to my heart.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Francis.